Emily, a young woman with a heart as pure as New York snow, lived a life far from the glittering towers that pierced the city sky. Raised in a modest Queens neighborhood, her world revolved around family and a job as a waitress. Humble, but enough to keep everyone afloat. Riches and glamour, not in her wildest dreams. That's what made her real, a genuine soul in a city obsessed with surface. Love and humility, those were her North Stars, values she held tighter than her worn wallet. But fate, that relentless New Yorker, had other plans. One night, amidst the clinking champagne flutes and hushed whispers of Manhattan's elite at a gala, she served hors d'oeuvres to Richard Sterling. Billionaire, ice in his veins, success etched in every sharp angle of his face, but a darkness haunted his eyes, shadows cast by betrayals Emily couldn't even imagine. Sterling had it all, the city at his feet, but his soul? Empty as a Wall Street boardroom on Christmas Day. Then came the offer, cold, calculated, and delivered without a shred of warmth. A dating contract. Emily nearly choked on her own breath. Preposterous. Insane. Yet, something in his steel-gray gaze made her pause. Her family was drowning in debt. Her mother's medical bills were a monster under the bed. This contract, this bizarre proposition, could be a lifeline. Enough money to pull them from the brink, to give her mother the care she desperately needed. Principles screamed, integrity warred with desperation. Sell herself? The very idea made her stomach churn, but her mother's frail face, the stack of overdue notices on her kitchen table. This wasn't just about her anymore. Torn, twisted, Emily felt like she was being ripped in two. Easy money? It was the most agonizing dilemma of her life. For Sterling, the contract wasn't about companionship. It was about revenge, a bitter pill he intended to force down the throat of his ex, Jessica. Jessica, who'd traded him for a penthouse view and a richer man. He wanted to prove he held the strings, that even love, or what passed for it in this city, could be bought, controlled. Power. That's all that mattered. Emily was just a pawn in his twisted game, a way to show Jessica, and maybe himself, that every woman had a price. He just needed to find Emily's. But Emily wasn't reacting like the polished socialites he knew. When she hesitated, a flicker of something other than dollar signs in her eyes, he was intrigued. Purity. Strength, quiet but undeniable. It disarmed him. A sensation he hadn't felt in years, a chink in his carefully constructed armor. Sleepless nights bled into tear-stained mornings. Accept, lose a piece of herself, her very soul, or watch her family crumble. The weight of it pressed down, suffocating. A choice had to be made. Finally, dawn broke, not just in the sky, but within her. She would do it, not for herself, never for herself, but for them. Integrity bent, but not broken. Her soul, she swore, would remain untouched. This was temporary, a bridge to safety. Contract in hand, a cold weight settled in her stomach. Sterling, with a grim satisfaction, thought he'd won. Another life under his thumb. He had no idea. This humble waitress, with her quiet strength and unwavering values, was about to detonate a bomb in his carefully constructed world. The city spun. One minute, Emily was pouring coffee. The next, she was catapulted into a reality that felt like a movie set. A movie she hadn't auditioned for. Waitress to arm candy for Richard Sterling, billionaire titan. Dizzying. The sheer opulence, the relentless flash of cameras, the hushed whispers that followed her every move, it was intoxicating, a dangerous drug. But Emily held tight to her center, her family, her promise. Luxury cars, Fifth Avenue penthouses, private jets whisking her to exotic locales, just backdrops. Her focus, laser sharp, her mother's health, her family's future. Sterling remained a fortress, impenetrable. Emily was a component in his plan, nothing more. Revenge on Jessica, control over everything, even emotions. Transactional. That's how he operated. Money, power, control, the holy trinity. It had taken him to the top of the world, and he saw no reason to deviate now. Days bled into weeks. Their relationship? A performance. Sterling laid down the rules. Emily played her part. Galas, power dinners, business trips to Geneva and Hong Kong. She was his girlfriend, a role she inhabited with surprising grace, navigating a world of designer gowns and fake smiles with an unsettling calm. Appearances, that was the game. Behind closed doors, ice. Sterling barely spoke to her outside of orchestrated events, treating her with a chilling indifference, an expensive accessory, nothing more. Emily saw it, felt it, but she understood the terms. It was a transaction, painful but necessary. Then something shifted, imperceptible at first, like a hairline crack in a glacier. Amidst the forced smiles and hollow pronouncements, Emily was real, sincere. She treated the waitstaff at Michelin-starred restaurants with the same respect she showed CEOs. In a world drowning in artifice and ambition, she was a breath of fresh air, and it didn't go unnoticed. Sterling, the man behind the mask of glacial indifference, found himself intrigued. This woman, this waitress from Queens, wasn't swayed by his wealth, his power, her hesitation at his initial offer, her quiet dignity. It was a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. She wasn't like Jessica or any of the women who'd circled him like sharks. There was a purity, a quiet strength that chipped away at his defenses. One night, after another charity ball, another forced performance, they returned to his penthouse overlooking Central Park. Silence hung heavy in the air. Sterling, shedding his Savile Row suit, retreated to his home office, another lonely night beckoning. Then Emily spoke, her voice soft but direct. "Why revenge, Richard?" He froze, caught off guard. Control. He always controlled the narrative. But Emily, she saw past the facade, beyond the power suit, the penthouse, the billions. She saw the wounded man beneath. "You wouldn't understand," he said, voice clipped, but a sliver of vulnerability, a hairline fracture in his wall was there. Emily pressed gently. "Maybe not everything, but I see, despite all this," she gestured to the panoramic city lights. "Something's missing. Serenity." That's what radiated from her, unsettling him in ways he couldn't articulate. "Money doesn't heal wounds, Richard. It just covers them up." Her words echoed in the sterile silence of his office. For the first time in years, he questioned his own motives. Jessica, the betrayal, the gaping hole it left in his soul. He'd built a fortress of wealth and power, a shield against vulnerability. But Emily, she was chipping away at the foundations. Love? Weakness. Manipulable. Buyable. That's what he'd always believed. But Emily, she was showing him something else. Something he'd lost, buried under layers of cynicism and bitterness. The tension shifted. The glacial wall began to thaw, drip by drip. Sterling started to observe Emily, really observe her. The way she remembered the names of the building staff, her genuine smile for the doorman, the quiet empathy she extended to everyone, regardless of their status, a light. That's what she was, a light he couldn't ignore. And Richard Sterling, the man who thought he controlled everything, realized he was losing control, and strangely, for the first time in years, it didn't terrify him. It intrigued him. The contract, he was beginning to understand, was far more complex than he'd ever imagined. Emily wasn't a pawn, she was a mirror, reflecting back everything he'd lost, everything he'd become. Months blurred into a strange, symbiotic existence. The contract remained, a ghost in the room, but something else was blooming, fragile, unexpected, an invisible thread connecting them, pulling them closer despite the chasm of their vastly different worlds. Conflicting emotions churned, a tempest brewing beneath the surface. Sterling's carefully constructed barriers were crumbling, brick by painful brick. Emily, clinging to her initial purpose, her family, couldn't deny the shift. Love? For Richard Sterling? Absurd. Impossible. Yet, living in his orbit, she saw cracks in the ice, glimpses of the man beneath the billionaire facade. Pain. Deep, raw, unspoken. He was a wounded animal, lashing out to protect himself. She knew pain. Humility, that was their common ground, buried beneath layers of wealth and resentment. Compassion bloomed, unexpected, unwanted, yet undeniable. Sterling wrestled with his own demons. Emily wasn't pliable, wasn't impressed. Her quiet strength challenged him, unsettled him. He craved control, but Emily defied control. Their conversations, increasingly frequent, increasingly personal, stripped away his defenses, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, frightening, forced to confront his own flaws, his own pain. Then Jessica reappeared, a ghost from his past, a siren call to his carefully cultivated bitterness. She sensed the change in Sterling, the thawing ice, and like a predator she moved in. A new proposal, veiled in apologies, dripping with promises. She wanted him back. And she wasn't afraid to weaponize their shared history, their broken past. Jessica's return shattered Emily's fragile equilibrium. Jessica, the woman who'd held Sterling's heart, the source of his pain, his rage. Could Emily compete with that, with the ghost of a love so profound it had warped him? Insecurity coiled in her stomach, a cold, unwelcome serpent. Sterling was blindsided. Jessica, the embodiment of the past he'd tried to bury, the source of his vengeful fire. But now, Emily. The contract, the revenge plot, suddenly felt hollow, childish. Did he want revenge? Or something more? Something real? He didn't know anymore. Jessica, polished, predatory, re-entered his life. A whirlwind of designer clothes and practiced charm. Seduction, that was her weapon. Familiarity. She whispered of shared memories, of second chances, trying to lure him back into the comfortable cage of their past. But something held him back. Emily. The tension detonated at a charity gala overlooking the Hudson River. Jessica, a surprise guest, a perfectly sculpted vision of blonde ambition, descended upon them like a storm. Emily, in her borrowed designer gown, felt small, out of place, a fraud amidst the glittering sharks circling Sterling. He tried to maintain control, a forced smile plastered on his face, but Jessica's presence was a live wire, sparking chaos. Then, the confrontation. Jessica, all saccharine smiles and veiled barbs, cornered Emily. The contract, darling, such a charming charade, just Richard's little revenge fantasy. Emily's heart plummeted. A pawn. Was that all she was? Despite the whispers of change, the stolen glances, the fragile connection, was Sterling still trapped in his bitter game? Doubt, an insidious poison seeped into her soul. Sterling, caught in the crossfire, felt the walls closing in. The contract, meant to be a weapon, had become a cage. Confusing emotions warred within him. Revenge or Emily? Past versus present. A choice he was terrified to make. The emotional fault line widened, threatening to swallow them both. Emily needed truth. Sterling needed to confront his demons. And Jessica, the puppeteer, watched. A cruel smile playing on her lips, ready to pull the strings and watch it all burn. Jessica's relentless presence was a psychological assault, chipping away at Emily's fragile confidence. The contract, initially a simple business arrangement, had morphed into a minefield of emotions. Emily felt like a puppet, dancing to a tune she didn't understand, a game she didn't want to play. Jessica's insinuations, her knowing glances, her constant reminders of the past she shared with Sterling were calculated, cruel, and devastatingly effective. Despite her inherent strength, Emily started to crumble. Did she truly belong in Sterling's world? Or was she just a temporary distraction, a tool in his twisted game of revenge against Jessica? Her feelings for him were real, a terrifying, exhilarating truth. But his feelings? Were they genuine? Or was he still chained to his past, his bitter obsession with Jessica? Every time Jessica slithered into their orbit, a darkness descended, a suffocating cloud of unspoken resentments and unresolved pain. The breaking point came at another charity dinner, another forced performance. Emily, playing her role, felt like she was suffocating under the weight of pretense. Jessica, with surgical precision, chose her moment. During a lull in the forced gaiety, she cornered Emily, her voice dripping with venomous sweetness. "Really think he sees you, darling? You're an arrangement, a placeholder. Deep down, it's always been me. And this?" She gestured around the ballroom, a sweep of manicured nails and diamond bracelets. "This is all part of the show. You're the prop he's using to get to me." Jessica's words were daggers twisting in Emily's heart. A prop. A tool. Was that all she was? Shocked, Emily tried to maintain her composure. "I'm not part of any game, Jessica. I know who I am and why I'm here." Jessica laughed. A brittle, joyless sound. "Really? Then why hasn't he told you the truth? About us? About why we broke up?" The seed of doubt, planted with malicious intent, began to sprout, poisonous and insidious. Emily knew Sterling carried the scars of betrayal, but he'd never spoken of the details. Whenever she'd broached the subject, he'd shut down, a steel curtain descending. She'd believed it was part of his healing process. Now, Jessica's words, cold and cruel, made her question everything. Was there more? Something he was hiding? That night, the tension reached critical mass. Back in the sterile grandeur of the penthouse, Emily, raw with hurt and confusion, confronted Sterling. She had to know. Truth, however brutal, was better than this suffocating uncertainty. As they entered the apartment, Emily, voice trembling but firm, turned to him. "I need the truth, Richard." He froze, halfway to his office sanctuary. "About Jessica, about what you two had, and why you chose me for this contract." Sterling recoiled, visibly uncomfortable. Deflection. His default defense. "Emily, it's complicated." "Complicated?" she interrupted, frustration boiling over. I'm living a life I never imagined, a life built on a lie. All I ask for is honesty. Can't you see how much this is hurting me? I can't live like this, trapped between you and Jessica in a shadow play I don't understand. Silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Sterling knew she deserved answers, but the scars of the past, the festering wounds, kept him chained to resentment, to anger. Looking at Emily, at the raw pain in her eyes, he realized he was on the verge of losing something far more valuable than revenge. A chance at something real, something good. He sighed, the sound heavy with years of unspoken pain. Jessica, she was my first love. We met when I was building Sterling Corp. She was everything. I trusted her, believed we were invincible. But then, his voice faltered. Success changed things. Money, power, they corrupted her. She left me for someone richer, more powerful. He paused, the memory a fresh wound. It destroyed me, Emily. Not just the betrayal, but the emptiness. The feeling that everything I'd built, everything I'd achieved, meant nothing. He'd shut down, retreated into himself, built walls of wealth and control. When Jessica reappeared, it all came flooding back. The anger, the need to prove something, to show her I wasn't the weak man she'd left behind. Emily listened, absorbing every word, the raw pain in his voice, the depth of his wounds. Finally, she understood. When I chose you for the contract, Sterling continued, his gaze meeting hers, a flicker of vulnerability in his steel gray eyes, I thought I could use you to provoke Jessica, to show her I'd moved on, that I'd won. He hesitated, a flicker of shame crossing his face. But now I see. It was a mistake. You're so much more than that, Emily. I got lost in my own revenge fantasy, and then you came into my life in a way I never expected. You brought back something I thought I'd lost forever. Relief and sadness warred within Emily. Truth. She finally had it. But she was also caught in the crossfire of a battle Sterling needed to fight alone. I'm not Jessica, Richard, Emily said softly, her voice laced with compassion. And I would never betray you. But you have to let go of that past, or it will destroy everything you could have. Sterling looked into her eyes, seeing, perhaps for the first time, the true extent of his self-inflicted wounds. He knew she was right. To move forward, to have any chance with Emily, he had to bury the ghost of Jessica, the ghost of revenge. But the path to healing was long, uncertain, and he had to walk it alone before he could offer Emily the love she deserved. The confession hung in the air, a turning point. The contract remained, a legal artifact, but the dynamic had irrevocably shifted. Emily knew the truth, the raw, ugly truth of Sterling's past, and despite the pain, she stayed. A fragile hope flickered, a belief that together they could navigate the shadows, outrun the ghosts. Days unfolded, a delicate dance of tentative connection. Sterling, slowly, painstakingly, began to dismantle his fortress. Emily wasn't just a hired companion anymore. She was different, real. Her presence, her quiet strength, her unwavering authenticity, it was a balm to his wounded soul. He sought her company, the sterile silence of his office replaced by evenings spent talking, sharing, tentatively bridging the chasm between their worlds. He opened up, layer by painful layer, revealing not just the scars, but the buried dreams, the long-forgotten hopes. Emily, in turn, saw the transformation, the thawing ice. The calculating billionaire was receding, replaced by a man wrestling with his own vulnerability, a man capable of tenderness, of unexpected kindness. Small gestures, a genuine smile, a lingering touch, a concern for her well-being, subtle shifts, yet profound. Something was growing, undeniable, unexpected. Cautious hope mingled with lingering fear. The contract still existed, a Damocles sword hanging over their heads, and Jessica, the shadow of Jessica, still loomed. Emily feared the contract's end, feared Sterling reverting, retreating back into his fortress, especially if Jessica continued her relentless campaign. Then came the escape. A private jet whisking them away from the city's relentless pulse to a sprawling estate in the Hamptons, far from the glittering distractions, far from Jessica's poisonous influence. Ocean breeze, crashing waves, sunsets painting the sky in fiery hues, a fairy tale setting, a dreamscape. Yet, a prickle of unease. Why? Another performance? Guilt-ridden gesture? Or something deeper? Dinner on the terrace, overlooking the endless expanse of the Atlantic. Sterling, relaxed, almost human. Conversation flowed, easy, unforced, the weight of the city, the weight of the past momentarily lifted. Then he reached for her hand, a spontaneous gesture that sent a jolt through her. "Emily," his voice softer than she'd ever heard it. "I know things started strangely, complicated, and I've made mistakes, hurt you, even unintentionally. But I need you to know, since you came into my life, everything's different. I can't explain it. The emptiness, it's fading." Her heart raced. Hope, fragile but insistent, bloomed in her chest. "Richard," she replied, balancing hope with caution. "I feel it too. Something's changed, but the contract, it's still there, and I'm afraid of what happens when it ends. I don't want to be temporary." He looked into her eyes, a long, searching gaze. Silence, heavy with unspoken emotions. "The contract," he said, his grip tightening on her hand. "It means nothing anymore. It was a mistake, a crutch. I thought I needed it to protect myself from feeling anything real, but I was wrong. What I feel for you, Emily, it's beyond any contract. I don't know how to prove it. I don't know how to." Tears welled in her eyes. Sincere, his words felt sincere, but fear still lingered, a shadow in the light. "I want to believe you, Richard. I do, but you've been trapped in pain, in revenge, for so long. How can I be sure you're ready to let it go?" He looked out at the horizon, where the sun was dipping below the waves, painting the sky in shades of fire and gold. "I don't have all the answers, Emily. Not yet, but I'm willing to try. For the first time in a long time, I'm willing to try." Silence again. The waves crashing, a rhythmic heartbeat against the shore. Emily absorbed his words, the weight of them, the fragile hope they offered. Their journey was far from over. Obstacles remained, unseen currents lurking beneath the surface. But under the vast, star-strewn sky, with the ocean whispering secrets at their feet, she felt it. A spark. A flicker of something real. Maybe, just maybe, it was worth the risk. Back in the city, the Hamptons interlude a fading dream, Emily navigated her life alongside Sterling, a tightrope walk of hope and uncertainty. Feelings deepened, tangled, undeniable. But the contract, it loomed, a specter in the penthouse, a constant reminder of the artificial foundation of their relationship. What started as a transaction was now a complex emotional labyrinth, and Emily knew a reckoning was coming. Days unfolded, a tapestry woven with moments of unexpected tenderness, stolen glances, shared laughter. Sterling, shedding his armor, revealed a vulnerability Emily hadn't imagined, a genuine desire for change, for redemption. He tried in small, meaningful ways to atone for the calculated cruelty of their beginning, the emotional manipulation. Emily saw the effort, the struggle. But the contract? It cast a long shadow. She feared it. Feared being discarded when the terms expired, reduced to another casualty of Richard Sterling's emotional war. More than that, she feared being just another pawn in his twisted game with Jessica. The tension coiled tighter. Then, one afternoon, in the sterile expanse of his office, Sterling made a move that shattered her carefully constructed defenses. They were reviewing documents, business as usual, when he looked up, his gaze intense, unwavering. "Emily," he said, voice low, serious. "We need to talk. Something important." He closed the laptop, turned to face her, the air crackling with unspoken tension. "I want to end the contract." The words hung in the air, heavy, unexpected. Emily's breath caught. "The contract?" she repeated, disbelief warring with a surge of something akin to hope. "Yes," he confirmed, his gaze locked on hers. "It doesn't make sense anymore. It was built on vengeance, manipulation. But everything's changed, Emily. What I feel for you, it's real. Continuing this agreement, it's just a constant reminder of a past I want to bury." Relief washed over her, a tidal wave of emotion. But fear, ingrained, persistent, still flickered. "Richard," she began, voice trembling, I don't know what to say." She blinked, trying to process the sudden shift. "Are you really ready to let it go? The contract, the past, all of it?" He nodded, unwavering. "Yes, I am. For the first time in years, I feel like I can move forward, and I want to do it with you. No contracts, no games, just us." A mix of joy and terror flooded Emily. Everything she'd wanted, a genuine connection free from the constraints of that cold, calculated agreement. But Jessica, the ghosts of his past, and could she trust him? Could she trust herself? Richard, she said, voice laced with uncertainty. I don't know, it's a lot to take in. Are you sure? Really sure about everything? He stepped closer, taking her hands, his touch surprisingly gentle. I know it won't be easy. There's still Jessica, still the past, but I'm willing to face it all, one step at a time. But I want to do it with you. I don't want to pretend anymore, Emily. I want us to be real. The warmth of his hands, the raw sincerity in his eyes. Something shifted within her. She knew he was being honest, truly wanting to break free, but the wounds were deep. Healing would take time. I need to think, she said softly, pulling her hands away, needing space, needing time to breathe. I need time, Richard, to understand what I want, what we really want. He nodded, respecting her need for space, for reflection. Of course, I understand, and I'll be here, waiting, whatever you decide. Days turned into a quiet contemplation for Emily. What did she want? Love? Yes, she was falling, had fallen, for Richard Sterling, or perhaps for the man he was becoming, the man buried beneath the billionaire armor. But she wouldn't build a relationship on shaky ground, on lingering doubts, on the ghosts of contracts past. She needed certainty. Certainty that they were both ready to leap, to trust, to build something real, something lasting. And in that quiet introspection, Emily realized something profound. It wasn't just about Richard, it was about her. The contract, as cold and calculating as it was, had offered a strange kind of security. Now, without it, she had to rely on her own judgment, her own instincts, her own heart. And with that realization, clarity dawned. She knew what she had to do. The moment arrived, decisive, inevitable. After days of wrestling with her heart, Emily was ready. The contract, once a symbol of artificial security, now felt like a cage. It was time to break free, to face the future, whatever it held, with honesty, with courage. She asked to meet Sterling, not in his penthouse, not in some power lunch spot, but in a quiet cafe in the village, a world away from the gilded cages of his life. Simple, unpretentious, real, like she needed their future to be. Sterling arrived, anxiety etched on his face, the weight of her silence heavy on his shoulders. He'd been waiting, suspended in uncertainty, for her verdict. They sat, the air thick with unspoken words, a sense of culmination hanging between them. Emily spoke first, her voice calm, steady. Richard, she began, meeting his gaze directly. I've thought about everything. The contract. Us. What you said. He nodded, tension radiating from him. And? The single word hung in the air, heavy with anticipation. She took a deep breath. I agree. The contract, it doesn't make sense anymore. It served a purpose, maybe, in the beginning. But now, it's just a reminder of a false start. If we're going to have something real, we need to start over. Clean slate, no contracts, no agreements. Relief flooded his face, a visible loosening of tension, but vulnerability lingered in his eyes. Emily, he said, his voice raw. I want to start over. More than anything, I don't know if you can forgive me for everything. She looked at him, seeing not the ruthless billionaire, but the wounded man beneath, the man finally willing to confront his own darkness. Forgiveness wasn't the issue. Healing was. Forgiving you isn't the problem, Richard, she said gently. The problem is, can you forgive yourself? Can you move forward without letting the past define you? Her words struck home, a profound truth echoing in the quiet cafe. His quest for revenge, his bitterness, had been a self-inflicted wound, a prison of his own making. Now, standing before Emily, he saw a path to freedom, a chance at redemption. I'll try, he said, voice low but resolute. I want to be the man you deserve, and I want to do it right. A smile bloomed on Emily's face, a genuine smile filled with hope, with a fragile, nascent joy. Then let's start over. No contracts, no agreements, just us, trying to figure out what this really means. He smiled back, a genuine smile that reached his eyes, chasing away the shadows. Relief, hope, a flicker of something akin to peace. It washed over him. Free. He finally felt free. The road ahead would be long, uncertain. Ghosts of the past still lingered. Jessica, the scars of betrayal, but with Emily by his side, he felt like he could face anything. Weeks unfolded, a slow, tender blossoming. No contract, no pretense. Just Emily and Richard navigating the delicate terrain of a real relationship. Affection flowed naturally, conversations deepened, laughter echoed in the penthouse, chasing away the ghosts of silence and resentment. Jessica, however, wasn't ready to fade away. She resurfaced, one last desperate attempt to reclaim her territory, to reignite the ashes of their past. But Sterling, now grounded, now certain, stood firm. His future wasn't in the ruins of his past, but in the quiet strength of Emily's love. One final, honest conversation, a definitive closing of the chapter. "It's over, Jessica," he told her, finality in his voice. "There's no room for it in my life anymore. I've found something real, and I'm not letting it go." Even Jessica finally understood. The game was over. Emily, meanwhile, remained Emily. Amidst the whirlwind of Sterling's world, she held fast to her values, her humility a beacon in the glittering excess. And that, more than anything, was what Richard Sterling cherished. One star-dusted night, walking along the beach in the Hamptons, the same beach where they'd shared their fragile truths, Richard Sterling knelt. Under the vast expanse of the night sky, the waves whispering their eternal song, he held out a ring. Simple, elegant, perfect. "Emily," his voice trembled, emotion raw and real, "you've changed my life in ways I never thought possible. I want to spend the rest of my life with you, learning, growing, loving. Will you marry me?" Tears streamed down Emily's face, tears of joy, of relief, of a love that had bloomed in the most unexpected of places. "Yes, Richard," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Yes, I will." No contracts, no revenge, no ghosts, just two souls, vulnerable, imperfect, irrevocably bound by a love forged in fire, a love that had risen from the ashes of a cold, calculated agreement into something real, something enduring. And as they stood there hand in hand under the vast, indifferent stars, they knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Life rarely was. But they had each other, and that, in the end, was all that truly mattered.